That's the new Santa Fe. That's just a Highlander. Today, I'm going to show you why the Santa Fe is the better choice out of the two.
With the introduction of the first ever Grand Highlander, the standard Highlander is now officially the smaller three-row SUV in the Toyota lineup. On the other hand, the Santa Fe has grown up to become a proper three-row SUV. That's why I decided to put these two against each other to find out how they compare.
Before we start this comparison, special thanks goes to our great friends at Don Valley North Hyundai. They're a Hyundai and Genesis dealership located just north of Toronto. They're kind enough to allow me to borrow this thing for the day. Again, we also did a separate review in detail of the new Santa Fe, but this time we've got the 2024 Santa Fe Calligraphy. This is the fully loaded one. Absolutely gorgeous. If you want to know more about them, the link will be in the description below. Maybe you can reach out to my good friend G. He'll help you out with anything if you want to take the new Santa Fe for a spin. Now you're probably wondering, wait a minute, Sam, this is not the fully loaded Highlander, and that's true, because that's the Calligraphy over there. This is the XLE Nightshade Edition. Unfortunately, they didn't have a fully loaded Highlander, so we're stuck with this. In Canada, we don't get to choose a lot of the trims. We work with what we have. But what we want to focus more today is in terms of space, how they drive, but also tech features. I have reviewed a fully loaded Highlander, so I know a lot about this car and how they drive. But this one is the hybrid, which is super important because it's new for this year. Now, let's talk about pricing. In Canada, the base model Santa Fe starts at about $43,000. The base model Highlander starts at about $49,000. So there's a huge difference between the two. In the US, you're looking at about $38,000, $39,000 for the base Highlander and $34,000 for the base Santa Fe. So far, the Santa Fe is going to cost you less money in comparison to the Highlander. Now, let's talk about design and how these things look on the outside. I don't have to think too hard about this. Santa Fe, definitely the winner over the Highlander, in my opinion. Of course, everyone has their own opinion and taste, but I gotta say, the Santa Fe looks really good. I love the boxy style. I love the flush design in the front. The backside, I know some people have had a few things about the Santa Fe rear end. I think I like it. I like the overall design. I love boxy style, and this earthy bronze exterior paints like a matte color. This is absolutely gorgeous with the blacked out 21-inch wheels. Beautiful machine. I have to say they have nailed the design of this car. Big fan on the outside. The Highlander, to be fair, has been like this for quite a while, so it does need a refresh in a couple of years. Not sure if Toyota is going to keep this thing on the road for long, because now we have a Grand Highlander, which is bigger than this, which essentially makes this sort of like not really the best option. But this one, it's got its own design. It's got curvy designs on the outside, front end, massive grille, rear end, of course, very bulky in comparison to the boxy Santa Fe on this side, which again, I personally am a fan of this design. Just the way this thing looks with the H pattern headlights, love it. Okay, let's talk about some exterior differences. First of all, third window on the Santa Fe, larger than what you see in the Highlander, just the way they're designed. Even the second row window is bigger in the Santa Fe compared to the Highlander. Now, why is that important? It gives you better visibility overall as a driver, but also as a passenger, so you get to really enjoy the outside view. Depends where you're driving. But overall, on the outside, the side profile on the Santa Fe, it's absolutely perfect in my opinion. The Highlander is a bit curvy, but does the job okay. Wheels. We've got 21-inch wheels with this package for the Santa Fe. Meanwhile, the Nightshade gets the 18-inch wheels. Moving on to the rear end. First, the Highlander. One thing you notice? Chunky, bulky design. The taillights are big. They take a lot of space in terms of the tailgate. It's very, very busy here. And then you've got the massive spoiler at the back, which is in glossy black in this case. And then you have the badges all around. But that's about it. Now, let's move on to the Santa Fe. Different design in here. You have a large rear window in comparison to the one in the Highlander. There's less chunky areas. This is all flat. And one thing you notice, this side is all the way to the edge, which means it gives you much more length overall, even though it doesn't offer the same amount of space as the Highlander. But everything, it's nicely put together in my opinion. Even the bumper, the whole thing is flat all the way through, which kind of fits in with the entire theme, that boxy style that you see on the outside and the side profile. Absolutely love what they've done with this thing. I think it works well. Plus, you don't really care about the rear end because you're not looking at it that much. Now, let's talk about cargo space. The Santa Fe, behind the third row, offers about 14.6 cubic feet of space. Behind the second row, you get about 40.6 cubic feet of space. And with the second row folded altogether, you get about 79.6 cubic feet of space, which is actually a lot more than the outgoing model. And it's pretty spacious. Next thing you notice is the fact that this comes with two buttons located onto the side that you can fold the second row. Next thing, the tailgate. You see, this is so large because the way it's designed, it gives you best coverage. Now, you're probably wondering, what's the point of mentioning that? Well, let's just say it's raining out there. Well, guess what? This will cover your nest. It's kind of like a large umbrella just sitting there. Or if you go camping, it gives you the best coverage. Into the Highlander. Behind the third row, you get about 16 cubic feet of space, which is 2 cubic feet of space more than what you get in the Santa Fe. With the third row folded, you get about 48 cubic feet of space, while with the second row folded, altogether you get about 84. So it's slightly more in comparison to the Santa Fe, but that's of course numbers. The difference is this part here. You see, it's not as wide because the way this thing is designed, it's got these chunky areas that you see on the sides. And on top of that, you don't get the same size tailgate. In fact, I'm sitting in the same position. As you can see, I've got about this much to cover me if it rains. I've got two cases here. That's for my camera. That's the equipment we use for some other things. Let me show you what I mean. First, we're gonna put the long one, and that's sat there. Now we're gonna try and fit this bad boy. So you can do that this way, or you can actually fit this thing like almost like that. You can do that. So both fit in nicely, or if you're worried too much, you can do it this way. But it still has a little bit of space so that you can move it. Now, let's go into the Toyota. Here we go, into the Toyota. We're gonna put the first one. So that's the big case. Yeah, you couldn't fit that. So that kind of explains how much space you get. Even though you do get more space overall because of the third row seats. But in terms of how wide this thing is, it's not as wide as the Santa Fe. So you couldn't fit these two the same way. And I gotta put them back. Okay, let's try and get into the third row, which I've done many times with this car. It's got some space, you can get into the third row easily. It's not bad. And that's about it. Now, keep in mind, third rows for these kind of SUVs, unless it's a Grand Highlander, are used mostly for children, not someone my height. But this one is actually not bad. Small window though. We've got some cup holders in here, and that's about it. Now, let's jump into the Santa Fe so I can give you an idea the difference. Okay, let's try the Santa Fe. First of all, there's just one button. You press that and it moves automatically. There's also another button here that releases the seats. Now, I will say this, you get about 15% more space into the entrance of the Highlander for the third row. In here, it's slightly less than that, but it's not as bad. Now, let's try this. Automatic, you press the button, and here you go. Now, spacious, yes, not much. There's a bit of a difference, but one thing I did notice is the actual panoramic roof, this one has a large one in the back and a single one in the front, which means gives you a bit of brightness into the third row. There's also a rear AC with this package, which is quite nice, but the visibility on this side, it is definitely better in the Santa Fe. It's shocking that this has grown so much that right now you'd have a hard time convincing me getting a Palisade over this. Even a Palisade, let alone a Highlander at this point. I like the third row is nice. We've got two USB-C ports. There is 150 volts charging ports, cup holders as well. It's really nice. It's comfortable. I wouldn't enjoy being a passenger or someone my height, but kids would be okay in this thing. Now we just gotta wait for that to do its job. Sometimes manual is better. Let's come out. Let's jump into the second row. First of all, what do you get? Sunshade, which is nice. Tons of cup holders. You got two in here, one over there, some space on the side. There's a heated seat button located into this area and into the second row. Total seats. The Santa Fe offers between 6 to 7. In this case, this is a 6-seater because it's the calligraphy, the highest trim. In terms of tech features, you get standard panoramic roof in the back, a single one in the front. This one is pretty large, I have to say. There's USB-C ports on the side of the seats, which is nice. You don't get a climate unit in the second row for the Santa Fe, but you do get an extra compartment in there, tons of space in the center. You get an armrest. These are sort of your captain chair seats in this case. Nice and comfortable. Space, very roomy. Very roomy. It actually feels nice and large, which is great. It gives you a lot of room to play around and feel comfortable going on a trip. I would definitely be okay being in a second row of this thing. You get these hangers behind here to hang a bag or maybe your jacket or anything. And the last part, guess what? The armrest can be opened from the back, so you can access the armrest in the front from here, which again, it's quite nice. Now, let's jump in the Toyota. Okay, into the Highlander. First thing you notice, cup holders at the bottom. There's a sunshade over here. And if you notice, the Santa Fe has a power child lock in the front. This one, you have to do it manually here, which means I could not have gotten myself out of it, potentially. Now, let's jump inside. First thing I notice when I jump in is how small this thing feels in comparison to the Santa Fe. It's not as roomy. I don't get as much headroom. In fact, I'm just a few inches away. It feels smaller overall, but numbers say otherwise. See, this is the best way to actually experience and find out the space, not just looking at numbers. Numbers are one thing. Tech features, what do you get in here? There's a climate unit in the center, something you don't get with the Santa Fe. You can change the speeds, the temperature, the position of the vent as well, and you've got two USB-C ports. You've got two cup holders in the center, which is nice, and this one does offer between 7 and 8 seats. The 8th seats, let's just say it's most of the time useless, but it's good for kids. There is the captain chairs with this package, nice leather interior with some cloth. You do get a panoramic roof, I believe, with the fully loaded model. This one, it's not. But other than that, in terms of space, I could definitely see myself in the Santa Fe better because it's got more space overall and it feels roomy. This feels a little bit sort of claustrophobic a bit. It's not as roomy, it's not as large on the inside. Now, let's jump into the front of the Santa Fe. Okay, into the Santa Fe. Oh, this is nice and comfortable. Thank you, Hyundai. Put the seat in the position that I'm sitting usually. The interior of this thing, of course, is new for this year. It offers so much and it is totally redesigned. There's a lot of H pattern in this here. Another thing I noticed is the quality of the doors. They feel so heavy in comparison to the outgoing model. It feels like a really good quality. And they're one-piece doors. Meanwhile, the Toyota Highlander, apparently they're a two-piece door. So it's supposed to be better for safety when it's one piece, also sound isolation and so on. This thing is nice on the inside. I have to say they've done a fantastic job. Now, some people are not a big fan of this curved display that you see in here, but it is available. Another thing you need to know is that the base model Highlander gives you a 7.8-inch screen. This one gives you a 12.3-inch, which you're getting just with the base model, which is also less money than the Highlander. Now let's start it up. Here we go. look at that beautiful screen. Massive display that starts from the left side all the way to the right side. I love the steering wheel. I know it looks a bit like a Range Rover. I'm okay with it. I love Range Rover anyways. The gear shifter is located behind here. In terms of usability and functionality, everything is where it should be, and you still get buttons in the center for the climate unit. You get buttons with the steering wheel as well. The pedal shift is behind it. Everything is where you want it to be as a driver, and you get access to everything. The screens are sort of positioned more towards you. That's one thing to notice with that, especially with the infotainment display, not so much on the passenger side. It's kind of like a race car in many ways, where everything is just pointed towards the driver so that you get the best usability and functionality. Overall tech features, here's a few things that you don't get with the Toyota Highlander. First, you don't get a touch screen and buttons for the climate unit. Toyota Highlander is all about buttons. It is a little bit of an old design. It hasn't aged as well, I would say. But when it comes to the layout, the actual quality of the infotainment display, Santa Fe just completely blows it off the water. When it comes to the user interface, the layouts, the screen quality, the Santa Fe is the better choice in my opinion out of the two, just nicer quality overall. Then you've got the screen for the climate units plus buttons. Next thing you do get is 2 wireless charging pads for the Santa Fe, and you get this UVC light, which you can essentially slide your phone into the compartment on the passenger side over here, and it cleans it. Especially our phones get pretty filthy with time. You press this button over here and you leave it inside and it does the job, which is pretty cool, I have to say. Now into the Toyota Highlander. This thing actually hasn't aged well at all in my opinion, and it's been a while, so we have to be fair to that. The highest trim offers more than the XLE hybrid that we have right now. Small screen in the center. You can also get a 12.3, 12.4 inch massive screen with the highest trim. But it does offer a few things for this package, which is the heated seats, wireless charging pads, there's a smaller screen, and you've got some driving modes. But overall, when it comes to the design, the layout, I prefer the Santa Fe. Just the way it looks like, it feels good because you're spending a lot of time inside the car. You want to enjoy and have something that is nice on the inside. This, in my opinion, it's okay. It's a Toyota, essentially. So they don't go too crazy on the premium or luxury side, just functionality overall. But I do appreciate the fact that this does have a lot more buttons overall, which I am a big fan of. But in terms of space as well, you only got 2 cup holders in here, some space in there, and 1 armrest, which you can only open as a slider. In terms of the passenger side, you only get 1 compartment at the top. You can slide your phone, and some space here for the wireless charging pad, and that's about it. Santa Fe, you've got more space underneath. You've got more space on the right side. 2 compartments, 1 underneath and 1 at the top. 1 is they use for the UVC. Even when you pop the hoods, the Santa Fe sounds so much nicer. This sounds like a construction, like a truck kind of thing. This one had a soft opening, which I really appreciate. On top of that, with the Highlander, you don't get those shock absorbers. You get this hood prop that you have to manually do it. Now, why is that important? Well, let's just say you're topping up the windshield reservoir in this case, and this thing will just fly and move, so it's not as stable. Meanwhile, in here, all you have to do, pull the lever on this side, and look at that, which is, again, a lot nicer. Now, let's talk about the engine options. The Highlander uses a gas version and a hybrid. The gas version is the 2.4-liter 4-cylinder engine paired to an 8-speed automatic transmission, makes about 265 brake horsepower. And you also have a hybrid version, which is a 2.5-liter 4-cylinder with 2 electric motors that makes 243 brake horsepower, but is equipped with a CV. You get the option of a front wheel and an all-wheel drive. On the Highlander hybrid models, you can tow up to 3,500 pounds. Meanwhile, the gas model tows up to 5,000 pounds. The Santa Fe on this side offers a hybrid and a standard one, which is a 2.5-liter inline-4 turbocharged engine making 277 brake horsepower, and uses a dual clutch transmission. You also get a hybrid engine, which is a 1.6-liter inline-4 plus an electric motor that makes about 232 brake horsepower and 271 pound-feet of torque, but it doesn't have a CVT. It actually has a 6-speed automatic transmission. it can tow up to 4,500 pounds, which is about 500 pounds less than the Toyota Highlander. Now, the next question we want to find out is, how do they drive? Well, here's the interesting thing. I've driven the standard hybrid, which is the one that we have in here, and the standard non-hybrid model, and I've driven this one for the non-hybrid, but I haven't driven the hybrid yet because they haven't arrived, so I couldn't tell you. But I will compare the standards non-hybrid, how they compare in terms of power, comfort, and so on. So let's go for a drive.
Unfortunately, these two engines are very different from each other. One makes more horsepower, uses a dual clutch transmission, the other one uses eCVT, and it is a hybrid. Hyundai will offer a hybrid Santa Fe. Unfortunately, it's not available yet, therefore it wouldn't be fair to compare it to the hybrid Highlander. Hopefully in the future we'll get our hands and then we can discuss a bit further how these two compare. But first thing you need to know is the fact that the 277 horsepower in the Santa Fe is far better in terms of power delivery and of course quick off the line. The Highlander on the other side is more fuel efficient because it is a hybrid, but it does use a eCVT, which for some people might not be the best option and of course not as fun as the dual clutch transmission. Now, in terms of the road noise, both vehicles are very similar, but I have to say the Santa Fe, when you put your foot down, you don't hear the engine as much, even though it makes more horsepower and, of course, is a different engine than the one in the Highlander. Now, I don't want to make this part very long because these two cars, in terms of power delivery, are very different. But at this point, you figure out that my favorite out of these two is, of course, the Hyundai Santa Fe. If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell and check out my other videos on my channel.